I am taking the deep breath that I need. Wow, you know, this is going to be the sixth center, the sixth church that I have exited stage left in my career after forging very deep bonds and had and witnessed and felt myself demonstrations of healing, insight, growth, where I learn over and over again that my job is simply to be a container for the beautiful pouring in of spirit in its selfless givingness, so that I can become a divine instrument, so that I can really recognize and understand and express and take joy in being a divine human being. You know, my journey has been one certainly of, and I have a message, one message. They tell you that in ministerial school. You got to have your message. What is it? And I remember when I digressed for a moment. I was in school and we had Dr. Walker and Dr. Kennedy Schultz as our teachers who intimidated me. And they said, you know, if you don't have one message, you might as well leave now. And I'm looking at the door because I normally sit right by the door in case I feel this is not a fit for me. And you know what? I was the first one to put pen to paper. I watched my colleagues, you know, back in the day, I used to measure myself, compare myself to see if I was on the right track. And I wrote it down. And my message was, we must embrace our humanity in order to know our divinity. And as I grew into my becoming, I understood a new language for that. And that was, I am a divine human. You know, our Centers for Spiritual Living has a way of saying we awaken everyone, humanity, to its spiritual magnificence. And you know, when I first heard that, I went, you know, I don't know, I'm not that comfortable with that saying. I think, being the rebel, Gail's looking at me, we're all a room full of rebels for sure, and free thinkers, that what it should say is we awaken the world to its spiritual or its human magnificence. Because we can't reach this idea of divinity, because most of us come from this idea as God is separate out from outside of us. And so we're always looking to be better people, looking to improve, looking to finally become that which we seek. But in religious science, we don't teach that. We teach we're already that. I am that I am. And so we awaken, this teaching awakens us to our divine humanity, our human magnificence. And I think that's a really important distinction. You know, every time I come to a place where I have to give a final talk, a last talk, I get really serious because I'm a pretty intense person, serious person, even though for those of you who don't know, and I'm going to just look at the two of you and maybe Beth, because I just met you today, Beth, that I spent 20 years being a professional clown. And the reason this was divine intervention for me, not thought of and strategized for my next career, believe me, was because I am serious and I'm intense and I'm a striver and I'm an analyzer and I'm a watcher. And I always want to place myself on the right path at the right moment to say the right thing. It's a tiring journey. You know what? I think I finally understand. But yet, being a clown, being humorous is a serious job. Because you have to dig somewhere for it to be true. Not just as an emotional survival strategy. I, for one, I am funny. I say funny things. I say witty things, but you know, underneath it, there's always another something going on that I don't recognize as I'm saying it until I think and contemplate it. Why do I need to even do that? Why do we even need to think back to who we were a moment before when we could stay in the beautiful pouring in of divinity, of light, of joy that is free for us at no cost in the eternal present? So I thought, what am I going to talk about? You know, what's my richest message? Come on, Nadene, you've been in this business for 30 years in ministry. You must have something really profound to share. Oh my goodness. That's when I laugh at myself. I get very amused when I take myself seriously. So the message today is lighten your load. Take it off, unpack who you think you are and who you think you should be and who you want to become, and just be. There is a beautiful lightness to that. And I know you've heard this message many times through many teachers, through many writings. But for me, after all these years on the planet and 30 years in the ministry, it's the most important message. Eckhart Tolle wrote about it, right? The power of now. Now. Nothing else exists. And yet here we are celebrating, standing on the shoulders of all of those who have stood at the pulpit of this chartered church and have had a dream, have transitioned their own lives, have become more awake, only to take their leave and open it up for the next right person, perfect person, to grow and expand the consciousness of a community container, right? To continue making an imprint in consciousness. So ancestors are important. Shoulders that we stand on are important. And yet they're only important if we get the message. Be here now. You know, I think all humanity, I don't know if you're feeling it, I sure am. Now I'm up in Canada. You are right here in these States. And although I've never stood behind a pulpit and talked about politics, I have to say I'm much more interested in what's going on in American politics than I am in Canadian politics. And we've got an election coming up, and we're not, you know, there's a little trouble up there in the good old North. But I am fascinated with what's going on right now. And I think most of us who are metaphysicians, you know, we always try to find the gift in everything. We always try to see the greater potential. And, you know, when we were young, we could kind of, you know, we saw it in whatever affected us in our smaller circle. But when we expand our consciousness and know that how we think affects the consciousness of the world, we start to see that how we think will not only shape our life, but affects everyone else. And we take a greater responsibility within that. And so I think we are still at a point, though, always at a point, to figure out what's true and what's false. What do we believe? What do we, when we hear something, when we read it, when we listen, when we're in communication with someone else, or even talking to ourselves, what do we believe about what we think? So it ceases to become an idea of who should we believe, or what great news station is going to tell the truth and not be fake news, but what are we telling ourselves that's fake news? What are we telling ourselves that doesn't ring with the purity and the wholeness and the perfection of the life of God that is living through us? And the only way I know how to do that is to just pause and interrupt this reel so that I can make it real. Make it true. And how do I do it? I do it through humor. I do it through the absurd. I do it through the unexpected. Because I know, and you know, we always have to pivot. Look at this week. We had to pivot with the weather. We had to pivot with last Sunday closing. We had to pivot with the whatever you call this tropical storm. You know, we had to pivot changing our location on Friday night. Isn't that a beautiful gift that we have been given as a community? Hasn't it? Isn't it a gift that's led us to this very moment of now and the power that we all collectively have agreed to accept, that we are a community that is that greater vessel on this planet at this time that can decipher within ourselves individually and within each other and support within each other the revelation of that truth, that wholeness and perfection of each and every moment, because we are God ordained. It is God ordained. Lightening our load and releasing judgment deepens our gaze, the load that we carry of our self-image. You know, and I might have a weird sense of humor. I think we all are, you know, quirky and quirky. I mean, certainly I've learned more. I've been here 3 times and I see each one of you individually. Well, I'm now staying down at Poolco with Kim and David and Pam. And I had this image of what it would be like, you know, a little hippie, you know, kind of fun, relaxed and everything. But I'm starting to see their lifestyle and how they do their day. And it was way beyond, like it was different than what I really imagined. I have my own sense of it. We make it up, we assume things. And then we step into something and we go, wow. And we pivot. We pivot in our mind. The brain reel is interrupted and we're able to take a breath into something that we have never experienced before. And isn't that the power of now? If we can get out of our own way. So taking ourselves lightly, letting go the image that we have constructed and contrived and can pull out of the rabbit's hat in an instant when we need to put it on, you know, is the foundation of the spiritual path. So if we can open and receive the gift of life, all of the natural state of harmony within our body, our mind, our emotion, our spirit is revealed as one thing, not separate fragmented pieces that we have to constantly look over here, focus on that, but just breathe into the wholeness of being. You know, in Matthew 10:39, it states, he who finds his life will lose it. He who finds his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake will find it. Well, what is in metaphysics my sake? We say it's the Christ within. It's the Christ consciousness. It's that higher knowing that when we open to it will divinely guide us in our human expression of the truth of the spirit that we are. So to live curiously allows us to bring in a full realization of life as us all the time. But what happens when we're feeling lost, you know, when our heart, when we feel we have to kind of hide our heart or keep watch over our heart? What happens then? What happens when we're in grief? Because grief happens when we're in transition. And it doesn't matter what the subject matter, be it person, be it community, be it job, we're always losing, we're always letting go, because evolution in consciousness equals letting go. Evolution in consciousness equals letting go. But what happens when we pull in and close our heart or protect our heart? Which of course we have the discernment and the right to do. But what happens? I found something from Jared Anderson. And I think what happens is we become less authentic, less ourselves. Jared Anderson says, not okay. It's a poem. He says, I'm not okay today. So in the absence of okay, what else can I be? I can be gentle. I can be unashamed. I can turn my pain into connection. I can be a student of stillness. I can be awake to nature. I can sharpen my empathy against the stone of my discomfort. I am not okay, but I am many worthy things. And it's hard to lighten our load and unpack our self-identity if we don't think we're okay, even when we choose and discern to protect our heart. So lightening our load is not only about turning it over, trusting the universal creative process, ever inspired by God's love and the affirmative action of God as law in times of intended achievement or deep challenge. But it is also about how we see ourselves. When we see ourselves as forever becoming, evolving into greater awareness and experience instead of a static, fixed person, we can be like water. Yes. And we know it's not about the answers. It's never about the answers. We get to rest, we think, but you know, it's never for long. So when you're amused and you interrupt and take a pause and take yourself lightly, we are able to have the courage to take that next question. That the next time we feel we have to close or protect our heart, we might not. Because there's something grand rising, thank you for the song, like the Mauna, the strength, the beauty, and the protection I found out in a storm. That within us protects us in a storm of challenge personally. And we're able to let go of the backstory, which we also pack in this beautiful image. Who are we? Oh, we're everything that our experiences led us to be. Is that true? Absolutely. Is that all we are? Absolutely not. Right? Our backstory may serve to connect us with each other, doesn't it? We commiserate. We can feel empathy. We can see we're not alone. But a backstory will never expand us and advance us. It will only serve to soothe the ego's identity and keep us feeling like we're stuck and static. You know, there are some beliefs that say only some are chosen. But here, we understand that we are all chosen. And yet some of us answer the call and some of us don't. What does that mean to me? It means that we can't or are not willing yet in this moment of now to say yes to the divine spirit that does inspire and fuel us, that is that within us that knows it knows. That's all it means to me, that we haven't said yes to that call to be who we are, just as we are, fully present in the moment. I've heard Libby stand up here and say many times, it ain't rocket science, right? But it is an unpacking procedure, an unpacking process. So as we take ourselves lightly, we remain curious and we ask questions that have us leaning into the infinite proposition of who and whose we are. Not just my ego identity, who and whose we are. And we surrender to the greatness within us. Some will say we turn it over to God. That's how they see it, and that's true. We do. We turn it over to the divine within us, the benevolent lover of our soul. And we take this load we've carried for so long and we lay it down. I want to close with wise words from Aldous Huxley. It is dark because you are trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly, even though you are feeling deeply. Just lightly. Let things happen and lightly cope with them. I was so preposterously serious in those days. Such a humorous little prig. Lightly, lightly. It's the best advice ever given to me. When it comes to dying even, nothing ponderous or pretentious or emphatic, no rhetoric, no tremolos, no self-conscious persona putting on its celebrated imitation of Christ or Little Nell. And of course, no theology, no metaphysics, just the fact of dying and the fact of the clear light. So throw away your baggage and go forward. There are quicksands all about you, sucking at your feet, trying to suck you down into fear and self-pity and despair. That's why you must walk lightly. Lightly, my darlings. On tiptoes and no luggage. Not even a sponge bag. Completely unencumbered. And so it is.